All right, and welcome back to another episode of the FQ Show. My name is Carl, and I'm joined here finally again. It's been a while, but Dan,
good to be back
on the show.
Very good to be back, Carl. I don't have much to say, but I'll have something to say throughout the episode.
It's been quite wet recently. The comps team, they're struggling a little bit, but they're pushing through and doing a really good job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you mentioned off camera and earlier, as we've heard from a number of people, we've had more rain in the first 5 months than we have annually throughout a year. And so a lot of that's meant that our clubs not only are obviously seeing their fields go under with water, but as you mentioned as well, a lot of it's just sitting in the water table. So even when we've had a couple of days of sunlight and wind, we're just not being able to get mowers on the pitches, line marks, and it obviously then brings into that volunteer resource and burden. So hopefully this coming weekend and the weekends to come, we have some sunny weather and we can get some games played and start to catch up on what's been what feels like an already long season.
Yeah, absolutely. I myself have missed a few weeks, so I'm looking forward to getting back out on the park. Yeah, very much so. And we're joined here today by a very special guest, a former Socceroo, a former FQ board member, Jon McKain. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cal. Thanks, Dan.
Jon is the president at the moment of Rochedale Rovers. How have their season gone so far, and how's the step into the presidency been?
Yeah, the season's been interesting for Roachdale so far. The first team started a little bit slowly with a few interesting results at the start of the year, but the top team's gone on a really good run under the guidance of Ross Davidson, and they're sitting top at the moment, around the halfway point. So second half of the year is going to be very, very interesting from the first team's point of view. The club as a whole, it's been built up for a number of years from a really challenging period, 5, 6, 10 years ago to where it is today, which is an unbelievable transformation and a lot of respect and I guess appreciation goes to Paul Swindells, the former president, and his father Mel, and the committee there that have brought the club back from, historically as a big club and gone through some really big financial challenges to getting back to where a lot of people know it should be, and it will be sooner or later. Fantastic new facility, and below the men there's a really good foundation of juniors and coaches and volunteers and really good people. I think that's what brought me to the club back. My kids play there, and surrounded by good people, which is for me first and foremost in any club.
Absolutely, that stuff really does make a club. The people around it and building that up is really cool to see. Especially. Yeah.
Just I was going to add as well, Jon, really exciting, and as we've spoken about a few times, the new facility. Obviously, you've been there now. I think the club's been there for near on 2 years. What has that added to obviously, especially the men's first team, the FQPL 1, but I guess the community having access to that sort of infrastructure, the gym, whatever else. What does that add to the program?
Yeah, those that haven't seen it's a fantastic new facility, built at Underwood Park there, female-friendly change rooms, great clubhouse. At the moment, it's still kind of a shell, Dan, if I'm honest. That's the next project for us, is to build that club community feel of memorabilia, of history, of making it feel like a club. COVID's been challenging for a lot of people, and I think that the transactional nature of dropping your kids off and not hanging around and all that kind of dynamic's been challenging. But now as we get through that, bringing the community back, and ultimately it's not my club, it's their club, it's a kids club, it's a parents club, it's a family members club. So we want to build that club back to what historically it was known for. An unbelievable facility now that hopefully we can showcase some really great games for many people that come along and watch. It's a great viewing platform. The canteen's doing really well, so it's a great setup for future aspirations of the club building up. But it was a challenging period without a club and without change rooms. We all know what that was like. You kind of feel a bit disconnected from being a footballer and having a community. So now we're at the back end, I think, of COVID, and people are starting to hang around a bit more and wanting that interaction again. I think that connection is what that club can actually bring to the fans, and more so the kids and the players and the mums and dads that drop their kids off and want to enjoy them playing. It's a great place to watch football.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Jon, and we've spoken about it as I have with Paul, and we're really appreciative of FQ of Roachdale even offering up the facility for a number of, I guess, inter-regional geographical battles we've had as well, whether it's Australia Cup or we hosted both the playoff games to get into FQPL 2 there last year as well. I really like what you touched upon there in terms of it being a community space, and I say that because really for me, the thing that really resonates is football clubs need to be the foundation pillars of communities. So having the ability to have, and Paul's mentioned this, he wants to see, as you do, that club go into almost having the cafe on the weekend. So you go there because it's a destination. It's not, you don't go there to just have your kids play football and then head off. You go there, you have breakfast, you watch your kids play, you volunteer afterwards, maybe jump on the line, coach a team, and it becomes, that place you want to actually go and live your life to an extent. The other thing I was just going to ask is, and I've probably never asked this, the answer may be obvious though, what brought you to Roachdale? Because obviously the green and gold ties into the Socceroos colours, whether you just can't get away from that colour, or what brought you there?
Mate, well, I most of my juniors, which we might touch on a bit later, I played at the Mountie Malcravat Hawks. A rival, right?
Yeah.
But
Again, green gold. You can't get away with it.
I can't get away.
Even Wellington, gold black.
Yeah. And then before I ended up, having the fortunate step to go and have a career, I played a year at Roachdale, probably 6-7 months before I transitioned to the QAS. So it did have a familiarity with me. And then the national championships, I think we were talking about the other day, I think it was 1996, Queensland ended up playing at Roachdale. I was at that facility. The second field you played the other way. It was a lot different back then, the old clubhouse. And I was in a fortunate and really strong team. We won that national championship. So it had really fond memories for me. Obviously the TD being Scott McNichol, good friend of mine as well. When I came back and retired from professional football, he convinced me to come back and play for the club, and my kids started playing there at a young age as well. And it's just somewhere I enjoy being. My kids enjoy being. There's nothing better than going up to play a game, and the kids say they want to hang around and kick a ball around. You have a few drinks, you look, and an hour later, let's go, boys. No, we want to stay. Fantastic, right? Like that's what I remember growing up. It's more than football for me. It's that community aspect, and
absolutely.
That really appealed to me. Like I said earlier, good people there. My kids got along with the other kids. We've got some great parents and some volunteers there. So, all those things really contributed to me wanting to be involved, and now stepping up to lead the club in a presidential role.
Fantastic, yeah, and I hope that one of the trophies you can add into that trophy cabinet when you build it is the FQPL Premiership. That's obviously the goal.
Yeah, it's the goal. Like there is a lot of focus on the men's team and the top team, and I always look at it, and I probably had, when I came back from professional football and went to FQ on the board, I very much had an optic of professional football. My eyes were very much on that focus. When you actually step back and understand club dynamics and community football a lot more, that's fantastic. And the club as Roachdale is very much viewed through the top team eyes. Like, people look at Roachdale, they look at the first team, it's in the FQPL, oh, it's not a good club, right? Mm-hmm. But when you look at a lot of what sits underneath that, it's fantastic, right? And it's building year on year. So for me, the goal is for the FQPL to go up and be in the MPL, and the players know that. Ross knows that. That's his driving motivator factor of why he came from Lions to there. He wants to be a head coach. He wants to take the team up. And we're sitting in a really good place right now, and I'm confident that the boys and him can get it done. But ultimately, as long as the club's sustainable and that foundation is building year on year, it will happen. I'm convinced, Cal, it'll happen, whether it's this year, which we're in a good position, or it's next year after, it will happen. The goal of me and the rest of the committee is to make sure when we do go up, that we stay there, we're sustainable. It's a really good breeding ground for young players that want to come to the club, hopefully transition to the first team, and then go and have careers, play with their mates, build a really good club vibe. And it's there already. Like I said, just a few little tweaks here and there would make the club even better, and I'm convinced that can happen over this year, or next year, the year after. But it's going to happen, mate. That's what I can guarantee.
I want to look forward to it. It should be good for Roachdale and good for the area, good for the community.
Yeah, I agree.
We haven't had competitions too much for the last 3 weeks. Competition chat, at least, should I say? We've had the Female Football Week episode hosted by Tash with Kate and Ray. That was great. And then last week we had one of your former teammates come on board, James Johnson, CEO of Football Australia. A couple of really good episodes there that sort of go into more sort of detailed chat on those topics. So if you haven't seen those episodes already, make sure you go back and watch them. The JJ one was a 2-part special, so covered a variety of topics that impact all footballers in Queensland. So it was great to sort of sit down and discuss with him the future of football in Australia, and just in the eyes of...
Hear it firsthand
in the eyes of the boss.
The top dog, yeah, absolutely.
So if you haven't checked those episodes out, make sure you tune into YouTube or Spotify to catch those. We'll move on now to the big moments of the competitions in the last 3 weeks. Obviously, rain affected a few, but the last couple of weeks, last weekend, Brisbane City overcame a 5-goal loss in round 1 to Peninsula Power to draw 2-2. So they had their big club day there.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously huge for them to be able to get back on the pitch. They've now been rain affected twice. We had flooding earlier in the season, and then they were one of the first clubs to get back on after this most recent spate of rain. I think it was a really good showing from City. We had Matt on earlier in the year rather as well, Matt Smith, and at that point they'd stumbled through a few losses. I think City have now galvanised and started to pull some results together, and I think we will see them go on a little bit of a run now. And Peninsula are in an interesting space as well. They had an interesting or tough start rather to the season too, and then they started to lock in and get some results collectively. And then again, they've had a couple in the last few weeks. They dropped points a month ago to Moreton Bay.
Yeah, 2-0 loss there. So yeah,
it's been interesting. I think that probably shows indicative of where both of those clubs are at. City is sort of trying to rise to stand into the middle of the NPL, and Peninsula already there, but obviously trying to get back into the four.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lions leading the pack. Andy Pengelly getting a hat-trick on the weekend against a struggling Capalaba side. But that Lions side beat Olympic a few weeks ago as well, so that was a massive result for them to overcome the then leaders at the time. So
yeah, they've hit their straps. I mean, they've had a couple of injuries as well. They lost Finn Beakhurst to the knee injuries, we know. Zach Maltby's been out for them as well.
Yep.
So I think they really flexed their muscle against Capalaba. As we know, Capalaba at home, different story. They played, again, because this round was only played 3 or 4 weeks ago with the rain, they played Lions at home and went 2-0 up, and Lions had to overcome them to win 4-3. But now Lions at home, pretty strong showing. They're a good team across the park, as we know.
And progressed through in the Cup as well with a strong showing against South Australian Thunder in the fog. I couldn't really see much of the game. The cloud came over and parked itself over Clive Burke. I thought that was a bit interesting, but I mean, it's strong result for Lions. Though.
Yeah, huge. I mean, it shows as well, which isn't a bad thing when we talk about the pyramid. You've got Lions who are sitting top of the table in the NPL. You've got South West Queensland Thunder who are a top 14 in the FQPL 1. And it probably just shows that South West Queensland Thunder, again, they're chomping at the bit to get back up into the NPL, but just obviously they've got a little bit of room to improve as well.
Yeah,
so
100%. Moving on to the Mpl Women's, Moreton Bay and Capalaba got their first wins of the season on the weekend, which was good to see. And Lions edged out QAS, who was second on the table. QAS put up a really good fight, but Lions were just too good in that first half. Tegan Riding scored seconds into the into that opening with an absolute banger. So, I think the QAS, as we know, we've said this before as well, they go in cycles. Yeah. It's no different to the Raw at times. They go in terms of 2 or 3 year cycles where they bring through that next crop of talent. Yep.
They've got a number of junior Matildas in that team as well, young Matildas and then junior Matildas. And they're all available. They gave Lions a really strong showing. That's one of Lions' toughest games this year. And I think that goes to prove to me, I know it's been probably questioned on social media and even in the public before, why do QAS sit in the NPL when potentially on points they're not always there? That's why.
At the moment,
because they deserve to be there, and because for us that's about I guess pushing forward and promoting that next young talent coming through and giving them every opportunity to play the top teams. And there will be times, as we know, there's probably going to be results where they have ins and outs. They're a younger, inexperienced team where we see they come up against older heads, and that's no different to any young program coming through. But talent-wise, we know that they can match it with the best. I mean, Lions they're arguably the best non-A-League women's team in Australia. Do you know what I mean? The last 3 years, I don't know if many arguments can be made otherwise, and that's just purely looking at results.
Yeah, so, like when I talked to JJ a couple of weeks ago, we talked about a national cup competition for the women's, kind of similar to what we've got with the Capricorn Super Cup, but obviously similar to the Australia Cup. And I would really love to see how far Lions could go in that, because I reckon they would go deep into that competition. They are a very strong side. What Rob Askew is doing there is all about doing a job, and everyone understands their job and their role in that team, and they will nail it. But he said on their social media videos that they do that they probably dropped off in that second half, which is probably why QAS kind of got into the game a bit more. They got a little bit complacent, but still edged out and
I'd be confident they would match it, and if not beat or outperform every other NPL women's team in the country. I've had the fortune of watching a couple over the last few months. I've seen South Melbourne play Bulleen. They're the 2 best teams down in Victoria. I've seen Mpl play. Shay Connors is obviously down there now, and Abini as well. But I think Lions are pretty strong.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that, to be honest. And the other member federations have expressed similar sentiments that they'd love to even organise the end of a season. You know, Queensland, New South Wales is fantastic, but it'd be good to see our two best club sides go together as well.
Absolutely. Moving into a bit more of your space here, John, but moving to the FQPL 1, Rochedale haven't played in quite a while, but still sitting top of the table, which is good to see. The Strikers, one of your former clubs, doing not too bad, sitting right up there. Beat Magpies Crusaders on the weekend, so a strong result for them after a couple of hiccups to those sort of higher teams.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting second round, the FQPL, right?
Yeah.
You've got the four teams there, I guess, Roachdale, along with Southwest, you touched on, Redlands, we haven't talked about, along with Strikers that are all vying for that promotion, those two spots. But the teams that sit in amongst it are just as difficult, you know, like Roachdale are playing away, I think, to Sunny Coast this week. Challenging team, you know, really challenging. One thing I will say is that if people tune into a Roachdale game, they're never dull, mate. They're always exciting. We do like it.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of the season.
I'm always careful what I say on the show, John, for obvious reasons, give my role. But in terms of Roachdale, I think you've hit the nail on the head there for so many reasons, whether it's, to be honest, mate, mistakes at the back, whether it's exciting goals. Like, I mean, Marek's banging in for fun at the moment.
Four against Ipswich and a 4-4 draw.
And then obviously, as we've spoken about as well, just some disciplinary and some other bits and pieces. Not that there's anything too major there, but in terms of just some errors here and there.
It's a combination of everything, mate.
Yeah.
85th minute, do not tune out. I'm telling you right now.
I mean, the Mitchelton result, we probably, I don't know if you covered it in an earlier show, but that Mitchelton result, I was watching that game. That's why I was excited to see the return leg, but obviously that got washed out on the weekend. But that was pretty good viewing.
Yeah. So look, they're in a good space right now. This round's going to be really challenging for obvious reasons. There's a lot at stake, not only at the top but also at the bottom.
Yep.
And you know, if you're not switched on in that league, it's really hard. It's really hard. You know, the complacency does come in, and like you said, ill-discipline stuff that you can control. Certainly has been addressed by Ross and the boys. We're maintaining 11 on the field, and it's funny when you have 11 on field and
makes a difference, doesn't it?
It does help.
Yeah. So yeah, mate, it's going to be an interesting next few weeks, that's for sure.
Yeah. Moving on to the FQPL 1 women's Peninsula Power women's team have had a great showing. They lost 3-0 to Lions in the Cup Women's Super Cup just last night. But I think that's a very good result in a way for that team.
Huge. I think if we reflect again, and we've touched upon
last year.
I think Tegan was on a couple of weeks ago with obviously you and Tash, but we've spoken about the influence of Alex. Did you ever play with Alex?
Smitty, I played with Smitty.
I was going to say you play.
He tells everyone he's got skin folds of an Olympic cyclist. That's what he tells people. Smitty, so a little shout. Yeah, I never actually played with him. He was at Wellington Phoenix before me, and I've known him for a long time. So, you know, very shown his coaching prowess this year by changing his squad a little bit. Came in last year and built up the program there to a really good level. And I know he's got aspirations to make that a really big program. And himself as a coach, he wants to go on and do bigger and better things. So I'm excited to see how they go the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think the big thing as well is they play good football. You watch them play; they're actually quite exciting. They've scored some bangers this year, as we've seen.
The game against Brisbane City. Yeah, that was fantastic.
Like top bins there, and as we saw earlier, I mean they went down in the cup and they're out now against the reigning champions, or defending champions in Lions, but they knocked off East earlier in the season. Yep. You know, they're really pushing to go back into that NPL space, so power to them.
Yeah. I will give a shout out to Callie Purifoy, who scored 5 her goals against the Gap a few rounds ago. She's doing great bits for Mitchelton. It's one of those teams that's sort of pushing for that, get in the 4 or even get into that promotion spot.
Might be worth getting her on. Obviously, we've spoken about Callie once or twice before, but it might be worth getting her on at some point, mate, when she's in Brisbane, given the extensive travel that she's engaging on most weeks to go from.
Yeah, wow.
Like she's coming from, I don't know, Callie, if you're tuning in at home, but my understanding is she's once or twice a week having to drive. She lives in Gladstone, so she comes down and plays for Mitchelton.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if she's training every session, but my understanding is she's driving down once or twice a week to train and then play the games. But obviously making a huge difference to Mitchelton. She came down for the cup game this week, midweek against Olympic too.
Oh wow, that's big commitment. Yeah, love to see that. Into the FQPL 2 men's, no surprises here, but Spar and Ace are they're still clear it out of the top.
Have we made Spa a thing, have we? I didn't even know that was a thing. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe that's what service...
Look, it is.
Because Ace is a thing, but I'm like, Spa, I like it.
It's in front of me on the screen,
Works.
so we'll let it go. But unfortunately, those two teams were actually meant to come up against each other a couple of weeks ago, so that one got washed out, unfortunately, but hopefully that'll get rearranged soon and we can see how that one ends up.
They were down, I mean, that note, they went down, they got up against 2-1 against Magic, but they're actually down 1-0 until about the 70th. I think Teddy grabbed one and then they got the winner through King. But whenever that is rescheduled, I haven't had a chance to look at that yet. It'll be a midweek game, but I'd be
very much tuning into that one, 100%. And just quickly touching on the FQPL2 women's, UQ and Broadbeach played out a 3-3 draw. So that means that Taringa moves into first place there. So we're filming this show on Wednesday, but Taringa play Sunny Coast Wanderers in the Cap Women's Super Cup. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how a David Goliath battle for that one.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, absolutely in terms of league status, but Taringa at full strength. You're talking players like
Liz Doherty from Olympic.
Kim Abbott, Rose Calvert. There's 3 former MPL players that were playing MPL last year. So I don't think they're out of their depth by playing up against Sunny Coast Wanderers. Probably the difficulty for them will be that midweek travel to Sunny Coast. An hour and a half, 2 hours up
to Bribie.
Bribie, but it's a colder night. So
interesting. So that wraps up the review, I suppose, of the competition so far. So looking into the week ahead, just quickly. We've got a massive match this weekend, Olympic and Gold Coast Knights, 2019 grand final rematch there. Always a cracker, the Greeks versus the Croatians there. So always exciting football.
I do think that's huge. I just want to touch upon that for 2 seconds, Carl, if we can. And that is, we obviously had a couple of years ago Football Australia under the former administration brought in the NCIP, the National Club Identity Policy. And there wasn't necessarily hesitation to have those former ties, those heritage ties, ethnic ties. But obviously it just changed the way in which clubs presented themselves. And that policy is no longer in place. So Olympic, as we know, pretty proud Greek community. Gold Coast Knights, pretty proud Croatian community. When you do go out there and they absolutely, celebrate, spectate all the rest within the perimeters, there's so much passion. It means so much. You talked about community earlier on the show, John. It means so much to those communities. There's so many guys, when you go watch a game at Olympic, Coffee Club's a lifelong sponsor of theirs, but the guys in the Greek community from West End and Yeronga flock to that game, and that's genuinely, it's that old school mentality. They'll be wearing their Olympic shirts, they'll be talking about it on Monday at the coffee shop or the barber shop. Do you know what I mean? The old Greek guys will be chopping hair, and there was a guy, Pete, used to cut my hair when I had some in West End, but he used to always go and watch the games, and did you watch Olympic on the weekend? And that's that old school community feel you talk about, John, where it sort of warms the heart.
Absolutely. So. Well, we've got the best defence in Gold Coast Knights up against one of the best attacks. Hopefully some goals. Hopefully, awesome.
They banged in 9 last night.
They did. Zach Kibble, 6?
6 goals a lot.
Huge.
I mean, Power and Redcliffe, they were the lowest ranked team in the pyramid still in play, and they challenged. It was 2-2. It was 2-2 at one point,
Oh, wow.
And then Olympic banged in 7, but it was 2-2 at about half time, I think it was.
Yeah, well, so, not a bad showing from Redcliffe. They got promoted in the last year, so well done to them. They knocked off Capalaba as well. That was a huge cup set.
Massive
huge
cup set.
Into the Mpl Women's, Capalaba and Moreton Bay both coming off their first wins of the season. They come up against each other this weekend, so that'll be a good game. Rochdale coming up against Sunny Coast Fire. How are you feeling for that one?
Yeah, I'm excited, Cal. The boys haven't played, as you said, for quite a while, so hopefully they'll have a bit of fluidity. But the challenge of the last couple of weeks, as everyone knows, is training and getting that familiarity on the field, and as opposed to synthetic trainings, and the boys have been trying to stay ticking over as much as possible. But yeah, Sunny Coast are a good team. They're hard to beat, particularly away from home. It's not an easy trip, so. But realistically, if the club want to go up, these are the games they've got to win. The boys have to go there with confidence and obviously follow Ross's game plan and come away with 3 points.
That'd be good. Western Pride, sitting in 5th, they take on Redlands as well, 2 former NPL sides. So that'll be an interesting battle. I think this FQPL competition, right down to 7th, 8th place, quality teams all the way down. So there's always going to be fantastic games in the FQPL 1 this year.
I mean, the team obviously sitting at the moment, I think they're sitting in 10th in Mitchelton. As we've said, like quality across the park, whether it's Sarugo or they've signed a couple of others.
Front,
Edgar, Adam Edgar. Quality all across that league. It's very exciting.
Yeah. FQPL 1 Women's, Brisbane City hosting Mitchelton, so that'll be an interesting tie there. Hopefully Callie comes down for that one and bangs a few more in.
Plenty of goals.
Plenty to come through. FQPL 2 in the men's, Albany Creek are away at Wynnum and Service Paradise up against Souths, two former FQPL sides. They're comfortably kind of cruising through there. And then in the FQPL 2 women's, first place Taringa up against Robina City. Robina got some quality there this year. Some good games to tune in for.
It's interesting, like I was chatting to one of the players at Taringa this morning actually, and she was just saying, so they've obviously had a big win on the weekend, and then they'll come in and play the cup fixture tonight and then play Robina. And as I said, they've got that former MPL crop coming through, but they're a bit older, and having three games in 6 days is actually quite exhausting for them. So it'll be interesting to see.
Especially with an away day to Sunny Coast as well.
Yeah, so it would be interesting. Like Robina if there was an opportunity there for Robina to strike and grab some points, it's sort of sitting there waiting for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on now, we're just going to touch on an FQ update just to give you a bit more of an insight into the 3-strike policy, which was announced this week. You've obviously had a lot to do with that, Dan. So can you just explain to the viewers a little bit about what the 3-strike policy is and how it'll be implemented?
Yeah, definitely, Cal. So we included this in the FQ disciplinary regulations at the start of the season. So it has been in there in terms of like a soft launch, I guess, for the first couple of months of the season, and we have seen a couple of clubs receive a strike through that, and we did obviously disseminate that to clubs so they were aware of it. We've now gone through that social media and probably more of an advocacy, promotion, marketing approach now to make sure that not only are the clubs aware, but we need to make sure the stakeholders and members are aware as well, because ultimately it's going to affect them as we go through the strike process. It was prompted or catalysed as a result of just the ongoing themes we're seeing at fields, at venues, against referees each week. And they're not just isolated, as we know, to one club, one coach, one player. It's generally, for want of a better word, it might be, systemic across football. And we, you know what, it's not even across football, right? Like we've seen it, if we go to other sports as well, I know the AFL are going through a similar process as well at the moment, as well as other codes at rugby league. So for us, it's about supporting referees. We know we can't operate without them. We're trying to do our best in terms of recruiting and essentially retaining. And policies like this go a long way to actually showing that support to referees and empowering them. So we have had a number of issues, and I probably am going to take a moment just to highlight, just for people to have some context. And I feel like that's the best way to cut through it all, is when I provide 2 or 3 examples and people go, oh, hold on, that's not appropriate. And so there's a couple of things and I won't go into detail about people or even regions, but just recently, and this sounds crazy for me to share this, we had a referee finish a game in a region in Queensland. He drove home and he was followed home by a couple of players because they weren't happy with his decision. Now, they didn't talk to him. They didn't, you know what I mean? They didn't speak to him. They drove home and pulled up out the front of his house, and just in an effort to intimidate. So that's going through a process, as we know. I won't speak too much more about that. We've had issues where coaches have have obviously remonstrated, and I don't want to use the word abuse, but have been pretty heavy-handed in words against some of these young referees, and it's turned out that these coaches potentially, are teachers of the referee, have some sort of relationship with them outside of football. So I think it's really important as we bring through the younger crop, and that's where the biggest gulf we're actually seeing here is the 13s to 16s. We're pretty strong in bringing them in, but it's the retention from 16 to 25 that we're really struggling with actually keeping them involved in refereeing. You then go to 30 plus. We've got weekend warriors. We've got plenty of guys, plenty of girls who want to jump in and be able to do it at that age, but we really need to continue to show support. So as we go through the strikes, probably spoken enough about it now, Carl. The first strike we'll see in the event that, an example is that someone at the club has verbally abused or approached the referee in the referee's room or spoken to them in a manner, swearing, aggressively, intimidatory. The second strike is a similar sentiment, and that might be, again, as a result of the whole club treating a referee or referee's team cohort a particular way. As we go through the journey, you've got financial penalties that are possible, disciplinary penalties, as well as potential deduction of points. And then the third strike is that the whole club is liable to be held accountable for someone or the team's misbehaviour. And
it's big. And I suppose that's in an effort to have the whole club aware, so the club controlling things rather than us individually disciplining people. Because we have increased the disciplinary I suppose, punishments and that sort of stuff as well as part of this campaign. So
it's about changing culture. Everyone can say, oh, you know what,
Yep.
it's just a couple of bad eggs. Like, it's just one person here or one coach there, and that's great. Like, if it's just one coach, no worries, remove it. But when you start to see it happen a couple of times across a club, I'm not saying the whole club, or we're not saying at Football Queensland the whole club necessarily is poorly behaved. But the way to change culture is to make everyone realise that they're all accountable for one another's actions. You know, we've just had the federal election. Essentially, we make decisions based on club cohorts because ultimately they have an ability to mitigate the culture and change the culture at their own club. And obviously it's easy if you've got 20 members as opposed to 1,000. But as we go through this journey, we'll make sure that we're keeping those club members informed. We don't want to get to a point where a third strike hits the club and everyone goes, we didn't even realise we're on 2 strikes. So we will make sure that as we go through, coaches, players, everyone's aware that that club has received their first or second strike. So that then everyone, I guess, is, okay, we need to make sure we're behaving ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it probably seems like a big stick approach, which I think will have some pushback and has had some, but to be fair, widely, and I've read through a couple of reports we've received from other member federations, from other sports. It's been pretty widely applauded and celebrated as an initiative that at least we're going out and attempting to do something about this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how this rolls out, and I really do hope it has a positive effect. As you said, we've been applauded for that, and it's good to see that we're doing things like that. So, I hope that this can help with that. The retention of those referees.
It's another string to the bow. It's another part of the process about educating clubs, retaining, as I said, and recruiting referees, and making sure that we're collectively protecting the game to the campaign we've launched as part of it as well.
Yeah. If you want any more sort of information on those policies, feel free to head to our website and check in on that. We're obviously posting a lot of stuff to our social media channels as well, so make sure you tune into that. We're going to move on to our next segment now in the chair with Jon McKain. Jon, you've had a very sort of storied career, and we'll talk about that a little bit sort of later on. But I want to sort of touch more on, and we did touch on it in the intro, but what your involvement is with football now. You're working with the PFA and giving back to the game, and you're a board member for 3 years at FQ here. So I just wanted you to give a little bit of insight onto what you currently do now and how you got involved with the FQ board, etc.
Yeah, thanks, Cal. My role now, so I work for the PFA, which is Professional Footballers Australia, the Players Union, and I'm Player Relations Manager. So my role's quite diverse in the sense of, I guess, a few key components. One key component is sitting down with some players and my cohorts, the Brisbane Royal men and women, and also the overseas and national team Socceroos, Socceroos, more so the men's side. We've got someone that does the same role as me in the women's side internationally, and talking to them about life after football. Really is the ultimate one. What would you do if you weren't a footballer? And they're really hard conversations to have with a lot of players that kind of feel like you're questioning will they go on and have a successful career, but ultimately, the only guarantee anyone can give any player when they're playing is that it'll end. It will end. Yeah. Whether it's you deciding, your body deciding, you don't have a contract or form, or you decide financially it's maybe not the right thing for you, it will end. And how well prepared you are for that moment is going to be fundamental to how well you transition. So we sit down with a lot of players and map out a little bit of a plan and start talking about dual careers, things like that, interests away from the game, which are really fundamental for not only that person, right, but that player having a meaningful career on the field. There's so much evidence now to support players that do have interests away from the game that has a positive impact on their ability to play really good football and have longer lasting careers. So that's one part of it. The other part is I sit across the A-League cohort with player relations matters, which is contract issues, insurance matters, agent agreements. So it's quite a broad role, and we see it's quite an interesting role, and there's a lot of challenges that the players face, but also some information. We provide players information around, certainly sometimes things they don't want to hear, whether they're locked into an agent agreement, whether they're locked in a professional contract. They come to us, say, I don't want to be there, I want to get out, and that's fine. But when we look at the legalities in their contract, often we have to go back and say, give them information they don't want to hear. But it's part and parcel of being a footballer. The higher up you go, the more you realise that it's more than just what you do on the field. Being a professional footballer, it's how you live, how you act, all the stuff that sits away from the ground, contracts, agents, how you live, how you sleep, all that stuff really does matter. So it's a really broad educational aspect that we sit in and around players as well to help hopefully develop them as people first and foremost that will have an impact on them as a player. So in a long way, hopefully that answers your question. It's quite a broad role, but just supporting the players really, that's what we're about.
Cool. Probably two things I wanted to ask you out of that, John, was how, as Cal touched upon, you've gone through a career where you've played professionally in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s to now the role you're in at the PFA. How has that changed in terms of the support you're providing for players? And was that available 22, 23 years ago when you started, or what does it look like?
The PFA was founded in '93, so it was certainly around, and the great CEO Brendan Schwab is still around today, heading up the World Players Association. So there was support, but certainly not in the way there is now. Every club at the moment, or every club in the A-League men's and women's, has access to a PDM, a player development manager, that does what I do, that sits down and maps out kind of a career for them and support available. So the support certainly has grown, without a doubt. It's much better now, and we're tapping into the overseas players, men and women. There's, I think on my database now, just on the men's side, there's 230, 240 men, Australian men, that are overseas and everywhere. Right, we're talking second, third division, wherever they might be, they're everywhere. So understanding that if they do have contract difficulties, if they do have financial difficulties, if they do have, troubles, where do they turn, right? That's the problem. Can they do it themselves? And a lot of times they can't. So we're there to help them in the event they need it. So it's a bit like an insurance policy, but we're more than just that. We're there to help them at the start of their career. Last year we launched a past players program as well, so we're helping those players transition out of the game, because we often have players that finish their career and they lose. The challenge for players transitioning out of professional football is it's probably threefold. One is the emotional attachment. If I'm not a footballer, what do I do? Who am I? Kind of that attachment. The social element. If I'm not turning up to a change room and have 25 guys or girls in a change room every day, that what to do, where to be, what to wear, constant aspect of that. And the third one's probably the financial aspect. If I don't have that income coming in, what am I going to do? And we do a lot of research and reports with our players, and the purpose of that is to better support them post their career. And some of the findings of players that transition out of the game are pretty challenging around, financial difficulties, around relationship and marriage breakdown, around serious mental health and wellbeing issues. So we've devised and formulated this past players program to help assist with that transition of still being connected. Like we said earlier, connection's all about that. Just because you finish football, it's still your game, right? But we have players that fall out of love with the game because of how they're finishing up their career, or just have had enough and want to switch off and go and do something different. That's great, no problem. But ultimately, you still have to work. You still have to have an interest. The worst thing you do is just do nothing, right? Yeah. It's an interest. It might be coaching kids. It might be doing something completely off spectrum, being a gardener, a teacher, whatever it might be. We have a lot of the girls are probably a little bit in a different bracket because the professional game isn't professional now as such. They do have kind of a career as well as a football career, which is really good for their transition, because they're not solely relying on their football. Ultimately, as that becomes more professional, they're going to get to a stage where they can pick and choose and say, look, I want to focus on my career as a footballer, which is great. So it's kind of reverse engineering the guys, because they've had their professional foot pathway, I guess, for a long time. Understanding, like I said earlier, it will end, and how well prepared they are for that moment is really going to be fundamental to them having a really successful and meaningful life. And getting back to, I guess, why I became part of the FQ board, I retired in 2016. I remember sitting around with a couple of mates having a coffee one morning after school drop-off, as we do, right, the dads, and we're talking about making meaningful change, and we all have views and opinions on football, right, like we're sitting here. Yep. There's no better way than to get actively involved, whether that's at your local club, whether that's volunteering on the weekend, whether that's, getting involved with a board or a committee. There's no better, for me, reward and give back than doing something like that. So I was approached and spoke to a few times about the FQ board, and I had a bit of board experience at the PFA. I was on the executive committee for 9 years, so I knew a bit about the roles and responsibilities, so I was quite confident in understanding it. But only when I did get involved did I really understand the diverse challenge of what being part of FQ is. You see the Mpl and men's and women's, and people look at that pinnacle, but like we said, everything that sits underneath that, from the challenges to regional Queensland to up north to wherever it might be, are really fascinating, and they're really the lifeblood of any football code. So I decided to get involved in that way, and then my term was coming to an end, and I had some other interests that I wanted to get involved with, and I decided to do that, and now I've decided to jump back in and become president of a local club, which is my wife isn't too happy about. But, mate, you get involved, right? Like that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
Volunteer. There's nothing better than giving back, and the only thing I want in return is just feeling like I make a difference. There's no money involved for me. I give up a lot of my time to hopefully make the environment and the football club a better place for not only me but parents and kids, and hopefully there's many more people like me out there that want to get involved.
That's absolutely what it's all about, is volunteering, and to make a positive difference. Like I myself, over the years, I've coached and on the committee at my club as well, and it's you're trying to push the club, or push some positivity into what you're trying to do there. It's it feels good when those positive things start to happen. You start to see a bit of change, or you tick those projects off, and you go, sort of part of that, and did that. So it's really good to be a part of that, and
Yeah, and I'm passionate, right? Like I love the game, like we all do, and there's so many people out there that are really passionate. You touched on earlier that the ethnic clubs that have so many dormant fans that have been sitting there, because when the A-League was formed, it was very much standardised ethnicity.
Yep.
There's so many football fans out there sitting there. How do we connect them? How do we get them back to local clubs? How do we connect them to the next tier, if it's an National Second Division, if it's the A-League? How do we build that support around our game? Because it's there's no point us talking about our participation numbers if it doesn't have a flow-on effect, right?
Absolutely.
100%. When you started off, you started, obviously talking about Malcolm Vatt and in the QAS program, played for Strikers in the NSL as a teenager, and then you went overseas to Romania, of all places, National Bucharesti, I believe. Can you tell us a bit about what that was like, and just how daunting that would have been as a teenager to go somewhere where you didn't know anything, you didn't speak the language?
Yeah, it was challenging. So, we talk about it internally a bit at the PFA now around, I guess, the opportunity now the A-League provided. But back when I was playing, as you touched on, I was at the Brisbane Strikers for 3 years in the old NSL, and we knew that a year later the NSL was going to be ending and having that year and a half, 18-month hiatus to develop this new league. I didn't really want to stay around and play local league. I wanted to challenge myself a bit, and I had a few friends that were agents, and one of them was a Romanian guy, and he came to me and said, he's got a coach that's over in Romania, would I want to go there? And I said, no way. No way.
Yeah.
No. Like, what are you
Still in Romania.
Mate, where is that? Right?
Transylvania.
where is that?
No chance. But he said, look, let's go over, no strings attached. We'll go over, have a look, see how it is. And I went over, and I was amazed, to be honest, around the level, the professionalism, this whole new world of football that I'd never been exposed to coming up and growing up in Australia with so many different sports. And the coach I had was an Italian goalkeeping legend, Walter Zenga, and he spoke really good English, and a great guy and great mentor, and convinced me to actually stay and sign a club. And mate, I was 20, I was in a foreign country, I didn't speak the language, I didn't know the culture. There was nothing to come back to, so it was effectively a sink or swim scenario, and it was really hard the first year and a half. Fortunately, like I said, I had a good coach, had some good foreigners to lean on, to be supported with, and obviously my wife, now my girlfriend at the time, was with me throughout the period, so I had great support from my home. And luckily enough, the first year and a half I was there, I actually played really well and started to open up the door. And at the back end of that, I was selected for the Olympics in Athens. And my coach and president at the time said, we want to make this club an Aussie club. We want to get more Australians. How can we do it? Who are they? I said, well, mate, you're in luck, because the old NSL's finishing. There's a whole group of players that you can pretty much have your pick of. It's up to you. So they came to the Olympic Games and watched us play there, and at the end of it said, I like him. Can we get him? And I said, yeah, I'll talk to him, no problem.
So two Queenslanders as well.
Yeah. So we got we got a few Aussies over there. So Michael Twait, Ryan Griffiths and Wayne Shroy came with me. That's that 2.5 year of club, and we spent a year at the club there and did really well. And then we all kind of went off on our own journeys, different places. But yeah, it's funny how football goes in waves, like Ange Postecoglou's doing at the moment for Australian football in the coaching world.
Stuff.
One person can break a whole cycle and create this whole flow-on effect. So I think that first year, like I said, I actually played decently enough where I created a whole new opportunity for Australians, and the boys came across and did really well, and we had a successful time there. And Now there's, I don't know if there's too many at the moment there, but it does go in peaks and waves. And at one time there was 8 or 9 Australians in Romania at one time. And when we were there, it was a fantastic league. Like, it was probably 5th or 6th best in Europe at that stage. It was voted. Wow. There was 3 or 4 went direct to Champions League. It was a really, really good league. Obviously, it's gone through ups and downs as most leagues do, apart from the top few. But it was a challenging league. It was really professional. Was a robust league that I learned a hell of a lot from. So
yeah, wow.
It's I think it's really interesting what you said as well, John, around having that comfort of having a couple of other Australians there as well. And I think we see that's where some great successes happen with clubs, and you see it in other sports as well. I know for a long time there's a few colleges in the US that always grab Aussie basketballers, for instance. And I think there's that, again, that element we talk about. There's so much to do with on-field and conditioning and diet and all the rest, but there's so much to do with making sure the players are comfortable in their environment and they're enjoying their football. It almost, I wonder whether there's probably not a ratio you can put to it, but having that 50% of enjoying playing football. So, you know, you're having Michael, Wayne and Ryan there as well, just would have provided you, or almost as you said, that family feel. Cliche, like I was going to say, you know, Vegemite sandwiches in the locker room sort of thing, but I'm sure you weren't doing that. But yeah, it would have given you that.
Mate,
that
we did get some Cadbury and some stuff. But people, and this is the education part again. We talk to young players around. They see contracts and overseas. I'm playing in Germany or Spain. I'm earning X amount of dollars, but that's fine. Everything that sits in and around that is the hard part. Yeah. It's really a lonely existence being a professional footballer. It's challenging, it's hard, and unless you've got a really good support network around you, it's difficult, you know. And like I said earlier, the good thing for me in a way was I didn't have anything to come back to. I had to suck it up. I had to get through it.
Had to find a way.
I had to find a way. And the great thing about the A-League now is if players do go overseas and they're not quite ready for it or they're not quite up to it, they can come back to a really meaningful professional league in Australia. Kind of, you know, we look at it different ways. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? You know, but the more opportunities there is for players to play professional football is, I think, a fantastic outcome. So, I look back at it with fond memories, and one day I'll go back to Romania and take my kids over and show them where Dad used to play.
That'll be a very exciting experience, no doubt. And you played a few other parts around the world as well, Malaysia and also Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
How did they compare to playing in Romania and then also, I suppose, the A-League?
Yeah, they're all different. I think the best thing I learnt when I went over the first year was in Romania, I didn't want to learn the language. I wanted to be by myself. I wanted to speak English. I didn't want to adapt and really understand, and that was a mistake. Once I started to understand that I have to make an effort here, I have to start speaking the language, I have to understand the culture. In football, you can prove yourself 2 ways. One is on the field, right, which is the easiest way, and second is to integrate with the team and actually find a way to connect. Because it's not like Australia where you come over and come for barbecue, we'll look after you, help you out. They don't talk to you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They don't associate with you. You're there taking one of their players' friend's position. So you have to prove yourself one of 2 ways. And I found that after a year of not doing that it kind of clicked with me. So I started understanding that a little bit more and having more of an open mind. So everywhere I went to obviously Saudi, and that was during 2010, 2011, and there was a lot of civil unrest in places around there. And we used to get calls from family and friends, "How are you? Is everything okay?" But mate, we were fine. Like, it's the Western world that were really portraying that onto us. But the people there were awesome. There was a great community. I lived in big compounds, which is only for foreign nationals, and gated communities. And we were really social. My wife was there with kids. Everyone was in the same boat. You know, it was the men generally would be working and the women would be at home with the kids or with the nannies, whoever it might be. There was an international school there. There was 4 or 5 swimming pools. It was like a resort living, right? It was really awesome. But when you left the compound and went into the community and we went shopping and things, mate, the people were awesome. They were great people. And I'd never experienced a culture like that without football. I loved it. After a year and a half, I wanted to stay, but, contract situations occurred and, it happens in football. And I always like to leave a club in a good way. I don't think there was always a common ground you can find. But I look back at that experience as living and playing in the Middle East is awesome, and me and my wife still talk about it to this day. Without football, it wouldn't have happened, and I've learnt a lot about the Arabic culture and how they live and how they view things just through living and being there through that period of time. And if you have the Australian lens of wanting to be Australian, you're not going to experience what you should experience. So did that in Malaysia as well. Went to a big club in Kelantan, which is in a really regional town, historic club. amazing, passionate fans, but very much not westernised at all. And that was challenging in the first part, to find some comforts, but at the same time trying to integrate and learn as much as you can, because that's what football's all about. Like I said earlier, it's not just the football, it's the whole cultural thing that sits around it. And players often don't understand around the challenges of going to a place like that. Like, the grass is different. They play with cow grass, which is the really thick grass. The balls are different. The humidity's different. Everything's different. And that change is really challenging. I remember, just a quick story, when I was in Saudi, after about a week, I got called into the president's office because we were doing a tactical session, and I was a centre back, and this stuff come pretty naturally to me, moving across, shifting right to left, and bringing the centre back in, and that. And I yelled at the centre back, "Oh, come in here!"
Yeah.
He stopped in the middle of training, started crying. A grown man started crying because I yelled at him in a way that he'd never experienced before.
Wow.
And I had to go and explain to the president that the president said, "You can't talk." And I said, "Yeah, I didn't know that. Like, this is how I'm used to. This is how I am, right?" So little changes, and I had to go and apologise to the player and explain to him what I was doing. But things like that, yeah, but we're trying to help, right? But the way I communicated it wasn't what he was used to. So little even challenges like that are really challenging for players. It's more than just understanding football. You've got to understand the cultural element of playing in that country. And once you get an open mind and understand that, and really immerse yourself in the community and do as much information, gathering before you can go, and obviously speak to us who have got good contacts and understand that little landscape. Ultimately, it's up to you to adapt and benefit from being in that country, from not just football, but you're there for challenge yourself financially as well. Players go overseas to benefit financially, but just the life experience is really awesome as well. So I was lucky, Cal, that dropped quite early with me, that I understood that aspect, and my mind was quite open, and the experiences I've gained have been awesome, and they've been all through football.
Yeah, well. Speaking of the experiences, you played for Australia, and there's probably no better experience than that. But your career for the Socceroos has been a bit of a sort of roller coaster there. Played early and sort of just off the back of the Olympics in 2004. Played Federations Cup 2005, but then a bit of a break after that. Then coming back into the team for the 2011 Asian Cup, I believe. How was that experience, kind of going through a change in manager and change in sort of international setup and all that?
Yeah, it was, it's obviously my highest honour was playing for the national team, and no one will ever take that away. Cap 482, we get cap numbers, so
lovely.
It still, really resonates with me. Off the back of the Olympics, Frank Farina was a coach there, and he had the Socceroos as well, and I had a fairly reasonable Olympic campaign and transitioned to the Socceroos, and it was amazing experience playing the Confederations Cup a year before the World Cup in Germany there. Amazing tournament. I played in all the games there. But then with the change of coach, Gus Hiddink came in, and I remember having a couple of camps with Gus, and actually, interesting enough, I thought I did quite well on the camps, and it's a funny story. As you turned up to camps, you used to turn up with a few boys from the airport. You get a car or there'd be a truck there, or whatever. A bus would take you to the hotel. And I remember coming with a good mate of mine, Jade North, who was in the same time as me. And the first camp I had with Gus, I thought I did well, right? And it was a 10-day camp in Germany. And then the second camp, we went back probably 2 months later. And we turned up, and Jado was before me, saying hello to the boss. "Hey, Jado, how are you, boss?" "Hey, yeah, great hug and all that." And I went up next, and I said, "Hey, boss." And I'll never forget this. And Gus said, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." And I go, "Oh, no. That was the moment, Cal. I knew that I didn't make the impact. And
in effect, you were carrying Jade North's bag at that point. He's, "Oh, you're the bad boy. Lovely to meet you."
Yeah, it's still banter to this day, But that moment there, I'm like, okay. And surely enough, unfortunately for me, it was the World Cup and the Uruguay game, and I didn't feature in that game, but I've featured in a lot of games before that.
Yeah.
But I'm realistic. I had great players in front of me, and it's perception, and the coach didn't think I was good enough for the team, and that's okay with me. It's always a hard phone call to have when you get told you're not going to be in the squad, particularly as I've been in that journey, the lead up quite often, and it was the golden generation. It was, it was my generation. It was a bit older than me, but I was part of that for a long time, and to not feature in that World Cup was challenging. But at the same time, everyone that was there deserved their selection. It's not, I'm not bitter about it. It's a disappointing factor for me that I never got to play in a World Cup, but to be part of the Socceroos environment and culture, and make long-lasting friends that I have today is more important than than a World Cup. And then had a hiatus with Gus and a few other coaches that came in, and then managed to come back in 2011 Asia Cup in Qatar, and the team did really, really well, and then play for a couple more years after that. I think my last game was 2011, and then like I said, the next gen come in and better players, and I'm realistic about that. We all have cycles and time frames, and I was lucky enough to play for a long time for the Socceroos and be in and around. I was probably in 1,000 camps, but didn't feature as much as I wanted to. But that's football, right? Like I always big believer in doing whatever you can. If you're not playing, you're pushing the boys at training. And we used to joke again, the boys that didn't play, there was kind of a little group of us, we'd give that first 11 the best head out they could the day before a game, mate, because we knew our role, and that pushed them. And when I did get an opportunity, I think I did well, but realistically there were better players than me that played, and I knew my role really well.
Yeah, well, the cream of the crop really is playing for the national team. That's the highest level you can go, and you got there, and that's such an awesome achievement. So congratulations on that.
Thanks,
that's really cool. So yeah. Oh, well, thanks for sharing your experiences there. No doubt countless more stories to tell. We could go on for
some PG ones, mate, and there's some ones we won't talk on camera.
Off camera we'll do that. But thank you for that. It was really insightful and really, really cool. Moving on, we haven't done a regional roundup for a while, and it's good to sort of cover those leagues and sort of how we're going. So we'll start up in the Northern Conference. Northern FQPL 3 men's, Townsville Warriors, the 6th place. They actually upset the last year's grand finalists, Brothers Townsville 2-1 over the weekend. So a massive result there.
Brothers and MA Olympic sort of leading the pack there. So definitely an upset from Warriors to jump ahead of Brothers there, but MA Olympic probably still the team to beat up in the north. Yeah,
up in the far north, they've been playing their League Cup in the last couple of weeks, so that's been good to see that.
We also had which I think you'll touch upon shortly anyways, we might as well cover it now, is the Australia Cup Round 6 clash, which was between the winner of FNQ and the winner of North.
Yep.
Edge Hill, as we know, been the perennial sort of Cairns entrant now for a number of years, coming up against MA Olympic.
Cracking game, that. Yeah, 4-3.
4-3 to Edge Hill. And it probably just shows that we've got a number of clubs. I mean, Edge Hill were our regional entrant last year into the round of 32 as we know up against Gold Coast Knights. But to only win 4-3, and they've retained much of those players. Chris O'Hare, Joshy Pym was playing there last year, and now being pushed, with a goal against Olympic. Probably shows we've got a couple of clubs that are vying to step in when Edge Hill maybe does hand over the baton.
So that possibly, they're in some good form at the moment. So this weekend will be the winner. Will be the Mackay leg against the Central Coast and White Bay winner, which was
across the waves. Across the waves against Magpies Crusaders. Mackay Football Park, 7 p.m. It's going to be the game at 7 p.m. and then the 4:30 game is we've got the same, which is the Mpl Women's Cup.
Yep.
And we've obviously got Magpies up against Central. Clinton from Central.
Yeah, yes.
That'll be a huge blockbuster weekend of football at the park.
Big afternoon.
Get down there and watch some football.
Yeah, both those games will be live streamed as well. So for those viewers not Mackay, you can tune into that. So,
absolutely.
That'd be fantastic to see. Moving down to the Central Coast Conference, Sky Alexander, she scored 20 plus goals already in just 7 games, I think. So
she might be our next Kelly Purifoy at this rate.
Possibly, yeah.
She'll be heading down to play for another club out here.
Raining goals up there. So she's actually part of that Clinton FC squad that's coming down and going up to Mackay. So you'll be able to see her in action. So hopefully she bags a few in that game. That'll be good. Moving down to the SEQ conference in the Metro FQPL 3 women's, Beth Gregory from North Brisbane there. She scored 27 goals in 7 games as well. So another player in our leagues absolutely banging in goals.
I mean, North Brisbane in that competition are undefeated at the moment and they're looking
flying,
pretty strong. Yeah, I mean, they'll be there and thereabouts at the end of the season, be pushing into FQPL 2. Yeah,
absolutely. And speaking of some high goal scoring tallies, we've got another 20 plus goal tally to Courtney Morris there for Willowburn FC in the Darling Downs region. So fantastic to sort of see some high goal scorers there. Moving on to the cup competitions, we've actually got the draw for that later this week for both the Mpl Women's Super Cup and the Australia Cup. We'll be drawing the final rounds of that, so rounds 6 and 7, the SEQ regions. We know what the regional stuff are doing, so Yeah, so we'll be doing that for the SEQ games, some possibly big games up in that. It'd be interesting to see Lions up against a Pen Power or Knights.
Yeah, so
but
having a look at how it plays out at the moment, we've got 5 games to be played tonight to give us our final 12 in SEQ. We'll whittle down to 6 and then 3. Of that 12, there's a possibility that 9 of them will be Mpl men's clubs.
Yeah, well,
the only remaining non-professional league club at the moment is Broadbeach. They've obviously booked their spot on penalties against Western Pride last week to go through, which was huge. So they're still in. But as you said, I think what that means from then is if we get most of those NPL clubs through, we're going to have some pretty big games in 6 and 7 to get through to our final 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Then in the Capital Women's Super Cup, we'll be drawing the rounds right up into the semi-finals. So we'll get to know who hosts that semi-final fixture as well, whether it be an SEQ team or the regional team, whoever that may be. We've still got to kind of finish off those games up there, but that's starting to come to the pointy end. The grand final obviously at a neutral venue as well. So
going through the process now of having a look at those venues. I think that's on August 26th.
Yep.
Which is also a catch-up weekend for all the men's competitions, which is great. The focus that weekend will be on the Kappa Women's Super Cup grand final. It's sort of, as we know, against time with the Australia Cup too, because we're meant to provide the entrance, our final 4 clubs, to FA in 2.5, 3 weeks.
Oh wow!
So we have had to really,
really get through them. The rain's caused havoc in that space, definitely.
Yeah, speed, accelerate through it rather quickly given the rain.
Yeah, well, they're looking to really sort of get things out of the way nice and early. They've already played the A-League knockoffs, possibly learnt from previously poor experience last year.
We don't want to be playing the grand final this time next year. So
yeah. One last thing before we wrap up, we'd like to pick some players to watch for this weekend. So we'll start with you, John. What?
Look, you can't go past Roachdale.
Who specifically from Rochedale?
Well, look, Marek's been a figurehead for us, and he will continue to bang goals. There's no doubt about that. But at the back end, probably maybe Liam MacArthur at the back. Yep. He's had experience with the Raw youth team. He's come back to the club he loves. Grew up with the club for a long time, and really looking for him to step up and hopefully solidify our defence. So we're not nervous at the 85th minute, Cal.
Yep.
So
when's TC back? Is he back?
He's back in training now. So yeah, Tommy Carroll's been a big miss. Big experience losing kind of him at the start of the year, and also Ryan Stenhouse, who have been there for a long time. So he's back now. So whether he's going to be selected or not, I'm not sure, but he's physically back now, which is great for the club.
Just good around the group as well.
That's right, mate. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Dan, what about you? Play to watch this weekend?
I mean, you can't go past the Olympic Gold Coast Knights game. We're huge, so I'll pick a team. I'll pick a player on either team. Keegan, probably one of the most formed players in the competition. I dare say we'll see him on the park for Olympic this week.
Yeah.
If it's not Keegan, probably the old fogies, I'll call them. Not that they're particularly old, but Steve Whitey and Dan Leck.
Yep.
And then if we go to Gold Coast Knights, probably Mitch Nichols. I think just having that, when they're coming up against these big games, Mitch actually always comes to the fore. Again, it's probably a cliche and lazy one to say, but he is so experienced, and you see him actually still giving the efforts in the 85th and 90th minute. So I think, Mitch has been pretty big for them, and then Joshy Langdon's always crucial at the back for him.
He always pulls up with a big save. I'll probably look at the women's game this week in Capalaba Moreton Bay. They're both coming off a win, so it'll be interesting to see. Moreton Bay, Izzy Shuttleworth's been fantastic in goal, and really kind of keeping her team in it, so it's good to see. And also in that Moreton Bay side, I saw Lani Fryer on the bench coming back from...
really?
Yeah,
that's exciting.
Coming
that's
back
huge.
from a knee injury, so it was good to see her, at least on the bench. I'm not 100% sure if she got on, I think she might have, but good to see that she's starting to come back into it. Then from Capalaba, it's hard to go past someone like a Whit Knight or a Larissa Crummer up front. So, see what they can do. Hopefully, put one past Izzy. So,
absolutely.
that'll be my picks. So, that's about a wrap for the show. A bit of a longer one than planned this week, but it was fantastic to hear about some big things happening in football. Obviously, the 3-strike policy, and then hearing about your stories, John, was great. As always, these episodes will be on YouTube, Facebook, and on Spotify. So make sure you're tuning in and sort of spreading the word, getting out, watching, tuning in, watching these. Stay tuned to our social media channels across the weekend for all the results and moments across the weekend.
Yeah, the cup draws coming up.
Cup draws coming up as well, so yeah, tune in for that one. John, thanks for joining us today, and Dan, it's good to have you back on as well.
Good to be back.
Thanks,
Exciting.
Cal.
Cheers, gents. Enjoy your football this weekend. Hopefully the sun's out shining and we're back playing this weekend. Catch you later.